If you want to be great, you want to be the baddest motherfucker ever at what you do, you're going to be misunderstood by everybody because you're going to be so fucking obsessed and so driven to get there. And that's what it takes. You will never understand what is wrong with me. And that's why I'm so fucking glad you don't, because I'm in the right fucking spot. When people don't understand you anymore, you're in that spot of obsession and drive where people are like, what the fuck is wrong with this guy? I don't want to talk to you, man, because you're not going to get it. Don't want you to get it. Don't want you to get it.
Hey, what is up? Welcome back to the Uncommon Life podcast. In episode 2, Rich Lewis and myself talk about each of our journeys towards being in the best shape and best health of our lives. We're active every day and we train hard most days. We're also very intentional about what we eat to support our goals, and we consistently keep good habits that help us feel great and be in good health. But it hasn't always been like this. It's been a journey for each of us which we've had to build towards, and each of our journeys have been different, as they should be. You have to go on your own journey and you have to do the work to build towards being in the best shape and health of your life. And there's no excuse to not be on that journey. You owe it to yourself and you owe it to those who depend on you. We at least hope that you can relate to some of our journeys and that you find them useful for charting your own. Before we jump in, if you're enjoying the show, we'd love it if you could leave a rating or a review wherever you're listening to this. It only takes a few seconds and it's a great way to support the show. All right, enough of that. Let's jump in and enjoy the episode. My suggestion would be to start with Lewis, because me and Rich know each other from a while back, and obviously in terms of the three of us knowing each other, it's only really been the last kind of couple of months. So I think me and Rich know a little bit about each other, but we know less about you, Lewis.
Yeah, let's do it.
So it'd be pretty cool
All
to
right.
hear kind of, have you always been like this? Like we joked a little bit before the call that you were probably just like this 4 or 5 years old, and 8-pack, and just that's just how you're wired, right?
I'm laughing because that's like so far from the truth, which is why I am the way I am. So this is funny because I'm keen to hear about you guys as well. So there's thinking about this in terms of what made me make a real shift. There's actually 3 different points in time, if I look at my life, that have really kind of made me look at exercise or nutrition in a different way. And the first one was when I was 15, 16. So this is going to probably make you guys laugh. I'm relatively short, so I'm like 5'7". When I was from like 12 to 15, I was also fat. So I was a short, fat kid. And it got to the point at school when I was like 15, 16, where I started thinking, I want to chase the girls. And if I want to chase the girls, I can't be the short, fat kid, because no one wants to date the short, fat kid. So, and I'm saying it jokingly, but at one point in time, I really realized and looked at it, because all my mates were like 6 foot plus and we were going out and I was just the little guy. So I thought I may be the short guy, but I'm actually going to be the short guy that's got a pretty decent bod. So that was basically my focus. So I've actually been training since I was 16 pretty consistently, but I wasn't always fit or healthy. I was like the fat kid, and I come from a house that just loves food. So I think that's the first start. So I've always been into training from that age. So I've always trained pretty hard and done a whole bunch of different training. So I've mentioned kind of like the CrossFit stuff before, done loads of strong lift stuff, powerlifting. I've tried all of it basically. But then what really changed and got my mind shift on more of the nutrition side was probably about 8 years ago. So after my wife and I got married, we were trying for a baby. So we got married and then we started trying for a baby. And she initially had a miscarriage, and then after that had an ectopic pregnancy. And an ectopic pregnancy is when the egg basically gets implanted in the fallopian tube. And she ended up having like a crazy surgery. So we had to go into hospital. We were rushed into hospital, and she was in hospital for 9 days, had a whole load of blood transfers, and could have really quite easily died. And then after that, we then tried to get pregnant again, but she only had the one tube, and she had another ectopic pregnancy. in the same place because during the operation, because it was so messy and last minute, they didn't take out the entire fallopian tube, so there was still a little stub there which got caught, and she had another ectopic pregnancy. So we then tried to, and then after all of this, basically what happened was so her hormones were all over the place because she'd been, and this all happened in the space of like 18 months. So it wasn't as though it would happen over a long period of time. And then she started looking at health to think, what is it I really need to do to improve my hormonal balance and my health and everything else? And then she came across something called the Whole30. So I'm not sure if you guys have heard of Whole30. So it's an elimination diet. And then she just started doing it to get herself feeling better. And then while she was doing it, she just, after 2 weeks, she was just feeling great, had huge energy levels. And I was looking at her and I was like, wow, that's really impressive. Because I'd always been pretty good with my diet, but I was never that dialed in. And because I worked out a lot, I always thought I can offset it. I can out train it, and I can. And then we'd have a conversation because she was doing it and she was having really great brains. She was like, you should try and do it with me. And I was like, oh, I don't need to do that. But I think it was more a psychological thing for me because I could see. So Whole30 is basically meat, fish, fruit. It's basically just clean food. No dairy, no wheat, no gluten,
It's kind of
no
paleo,
soy.
right? It's about as close to
It's
paleo as you
yeah,
get.
it's yeah. So it's just a real strict elimination diet, and you don't have like soy sauce. So it's like there's it's a lot strict where it's just salt, pepper, like spices. And I then tried to do it with her because I saw the impact she had. And actually, so after a month of doing it, she actually then fell pregnant, and that's where we kind of had our first. And it was just like crazy how much of an impact it had on her health in such a short space of time. And I was like, wow, there's really something in this. But then psychologically, I found it really difficult because there's no alcohol. And I was like, all right, it's like to give up alcohol for like 30 days seemed really hard for me. And then I kind of started reflecting and thinking, this doesn't seem quite right. So then she challenged me to do it. And she was like, I don't think you can do it. And actually, I probably did it for like 24 days the first time and then didn't actually do the whole 30 days. And it probably took me about 3 or 4 attempts to actually finally do it. And then when I did, I felt such a difference. So I think that was like 8 years ago where I really noticed the impact and the difference that eating just really clean can have on your health, your well-being, your mindset, and just the difference it makes. So then after that, anytime we were,
So Lewis,
yeah,
going
sorry,
back to
Wen.
that kind of like going back to that first moment, it was probably less of a massive nutrition overhaul, but more of a like, I'm just going to take my training. I'm going to get in the gym because I want to change kind of like how I look. Were you actually able to like transform your physique without dialing in the nutrition too much at that point by just basically just getting in the gym and trying to be more careful about stuff?
Yeah, because I still ate pretty well. So as in,
Right.
I'd still like count macros, or I followed like bodybuilding diets and other bits and pieces. So I'd have right, but I was counting calories ish, or I was somewhat aware of it. So I was looking pretty good still, which was
It's hilarious how what your level is, right? Because like the way you just described that was like I went into the gym, yeah, I trained, but I kind of like looked at what I ate a little bit, and then it was like the second phase was like the nutrition overhaul. But actually, it turns out like the first one you were counting calories.
I was
There,
I
it's
was
like
still I
I
was
think you have
pretty
quite a
good.
high bar.
I was maybe I was pretty good, but the thing, so what I'm missing is like I'd go out drinking every weekend. So I'd probably
Mm,
be eating well like Monday through to Thursday, and it would
right.
be a lot of chicken and broccoli. For instance, like my mates at uni laughed at me because I was just like chicken and broccoli guy, but then I'd go out 4 nights a week and have 10 pints each time I'd go out.
Yeah.
And then when I'd get home, I'd have a large pizza and a tub of ice cream. So it was just the extremes. So I'd try to be good, but it was just
Yeah,
for
yeah.
20 years, it was just all of that. Every weekend was just drinking and pizzas and fun and all that. But I was good for like 3 or 4 days. So it wasn't that dialed in. So when I say count, yeah, I probably wasn't. That's more of a recent thing, the counting calories. So
Right.
I tried to out train it, um, which is probably why I found it so difficult to think of just doing 30 days of no alcohol and no like chocolate or anything. Like it was like, whoa, this is so extreme. And then, but after we'd done it, we realized just the huge amount of benefits that we got from it. And then after I'd done it once, I then kind of went down a rabbit hole of a number of other things. And I then ended up trying, what was it, keto, carnivore. And I just like to try a whole bunch of stuff. I really was just really interested in how do I optimize my health. I was vegetarian for a while. I just tried everything, but this was the one where I felt really good. I was like, this just seems to click. And that was 8 years ago. But then there's been a third like moment, which has actually been the one that's changed things the most significantly. And that was in October this year when I turned 40 and we had our third baby. So we had my daughter Liliana, and I turned 40. We'd had her. I'd broken my arm as well the month before for doing something stupid, like sprinting on concrete. And I just remember holding her at one point, and I was like, I'm 40 now, and you're like a baby. And it was just a realization where I thought, I can't, this just has to be the number one focus. Where in 10, 20, 30 years' time, and I've mentioned this to you guys before, like, I want to be in phenomenal shape to be able to hang out with you. And I didn't have it so much with my sons, and I think because I hadn't turned 40 yet, but that turning 40 was just such a, wow, I'm like 40 now. And I was looking at her thinking, when you're 30, which isn't that old if we think about it. Like, I'm 40 now, I still like to hang out with my folks and have them help out with the grandkids and other bits. When you're 30, I'm going to be 70. I was like, and since then, so from October, that's where I've just really taken it to a whole nother level, where food's just been great, training's been great. I haven't been drinking as often. I think the drinking one's an interesting one. Don't eat as much like ice cream as often. I don't just go and have like weekends of cookies and other bit. And I'm just so much just cleaner with it because I'm not now doing it for me from like an aesthetic point of view of I just want to look good. I'm doing it to be healthy for them in like 20, 30 years time, which is so like my why is like a lot different now. So I guess that's my trend, like my lifestyle. So I always trained, but the diet wasn't great. Then tried like the Whole30, which at the time was like crazy extreme and made me realize mentally how I had some real, I think, issues with food and alcohol because I couldn't kind of like temper it and the thought of doing 30 days. And then most recently turning 40 and having my baby, I was like, I'm looking like 20, 30 years down the road now. And that's just really turned up the dial.
Hey, Lewis, if you were to go back to your 21-year-old self, your university self, when you were a chicken and broccoli guy, and just give the advice that you wanted to give, like you today would give them, like what would you actually tell yourself to do differently?
I'll be honest, mate, I wouldn't change anything because I had a great time. Yeah. So I would actually say, like from 20 to 30, I wouldn't change anything. I probably wouldn't drink as many pints, and I'd probably be a bit smarter. I'd probably have like a vodka tonic. But honestly, I wouldn't change anything. From 20 to 30, I had a good time. I did traveling, like had some great holidays, good fun. And so I look back and think that time was for living and having a good time. And I really had a good time, which is probably why now I can do this and it doesn't feel like I'm giving anything up because I had that experience of having that good time before. So I wouldn't change anything. I probably wouldn't drink as much because I had some nights which were pretty like ridiculous. And that was just dangerous. I shouldn't have done that. So I probably wouldn't drink as excessively, but I'd still have a good time and enjoy myself.
I think that's a good answer because like as I was listening to you, that's a neat story. You know, it's like your first one was driven by, you know, wanting to look better, but you still had some fun. And then there was like a second phase, which was like, this is just making me feel better. And then that third phase was like a really purpose-driven kind of shift, right? I reckon I still need to have that purpose-driven shift. In my head, I'm saying it, but I don't think I felt it like you felt it. But yeah, that's a good answer because like that feels like a pretty neat 3-phase shift into living the life we're living now. Like that's quite neat.
Yeah, thanks, man. And I think that's probably why I don't find it that hard now. Which is it's just this is just my life now. And I've started posting a few more things on Instagram and social stuff just because I just don't give a fuck. Like, unless this is me now and I love it and I'm going to try and just share some of this. And if I can positively influence anyone to have someone think, oh, maybe I need to do a bit of that, then I'm happy because it's like, this is what I'm all about now.
Super cool.
I think what's really interesting there is the consistency on the training. It sounds to me, correct me if I'm wrong here, but it sounds like you've been consistently training all the way through, which is different to my own journey, where that's probably made those stages easier to adapt to because you've always been consistent on the training side since you were very young?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I have 100. So since from the age of 16, I've recorded everything. I was joking with Daniel about this the other day with my cousin, where it's like I remember we used to write down everything in like a little training journal. So I have got like training journals from like 10 years ago where I'd write down what I was benching and what I'd go and what I'd do on bent over rows or whatever. So I've always trained. I've probably on average trained like 4 days a week, every week from the age of 16. My training wasn't always the best, if I'm on it. Like now I think I've got it pretty good. I didn't do as much cardio and I did a lot more just 5 days of weights. And I think just adding extra cardio now makes a lot of difference on a number of different levels. But yeah, I've always been pretty consistent with the training.
Yeah, that's nice. I know a few friends that like are in that sort of similar position, and I think there's something about it. It just gives you a really good baseline that doesn't go away, and it kind of makes things a little easier as you get older. Versus, I was probably somewhere in the middle, in that I was training, but it was pretty inconsistent, and there would be large periods where I wasn't training, and so I don't think anywhere near as disciplined as you. But I do sometimes look back and wonder if I was more disciplined and was more consistent in my training, even if I didn't take like nutrition and other things seriously. If I had a story that was a bit more like yours, I wonder whether I'd have kind of just a stronger baseline of muscle and muscle memory to almost go back to. Because sometimes it feels like I'm sort of building in my 40s what I should have really been building in my 20s and 30s.
I think a lot of it was I trained really hard just because I did like eat and drink pretty badly. Like when I think about it, there was a lot of beers and a lot of pizza. And I think I'm going to go out tonight, so I'm going to destroy myself in the gym. It was that kind of relationship of I'm going to go and hit it really hard for like an hour and a half, and then I've earned my 5 beers or my pizza later. So I don't know if that was very healthy, but I guess it kind of allowed me to maintain something for a little while.
Do you think there's another phase to come?
Oh, I don't know. I'm sure there will be, but I feel like I'm in a really good spot.
There's still Goggins level to get to, right?
Yeah,
so there's still some space.
I just feel like I'm in a really good space now. Like just with my exercise, with my diet, just I feel like I've got a sweet spot where I've got a nice balance. I still go out and can enjoy myself a little bit. I don't get my nipple clamps out as often if I do go off for a day or two. Like I just feel like I've got the balance pretty good. The nipple clamp. Why do you like that?
What podcast is this? Sorry, I'm
you've seen what's the film called? When what's it called? Oh, it's going to really annoy me. We'll add it in the show notes where he's got a donut and he's got like the nipple like electrodes on. Stop it. We'll have to cut this. I'll have to figure out what it is. It's a funny one. I'll show you the clip. I'll show you the clip.
I guess now we have to put it in the show notes so that
I'll show you the clip.
People can see you're not totally crazy.
So that's enough about me then. Over to you guys. Thanks, man.
Yeah, Daniel, let's hear it, man. What's the journey been like?
Yeah, it was interesting to think back on it. Actually, I learned quite a lot thinking back on it because it's usually the case, right? When you look back in hindsight, you're able to piece some things together in a way which like shed some light on how it all happened. And as per usual, it doesn't usually happen so well crafted as you would like to think. It's kind of a bit more random than you would think. For me, I mean, I'll actually start at the more recent shift because for me, I've had like one really big shift that's more noticeable than any other shift, and it happened at the beginning of this year. And I was trying to think about, and like you, Lewis, there was a couple of phases before, but it's easier if I just kind of explain those afterwards. So I'd been building towards it, but at the beginning of this year, there were 2 things that kind of happened that I think were inflection points that caused me to kind of have a real shift and just take everything to the completely next level. Counting calories, really kind of training more, being more careful and mindful about how I'm training, like lifestyle and habits, like everything just got taken to a new level. And my just general mindset around it all, about how important I was gonna make it, and I was actually gonna make it happen rather than talk about it. And one was really the aesthetic side of things. I think actually for most of my adult life, I've had some insecurities with how I've looked. And that's usually come back down to sitting somewhere between 16, 17 to 20% body fat. Not super fat, not like probably not even fat. It's probably about average. But for me, I had a lot of insecurity about that. And actually for my whole adult life, I haven't really felt comfortable to take my top off in public at all. Not even just around the house and stuff. I'd always wear a t-shirt and things like that, just because I just felt embarrassed. And certainly if there was like anything going on with friends in the summer at a park or something like that, I would never take my top off because I was very, very insecure about it. And I just decided enough is enough. Like, it's just unacceptable to be in that level percentage body fat. You just don't look like you work out particularly. Even if you have a little bit of muscle mass, it doesn't stand out as something that looks good. So way less purpose driven than you, Lewis. But for me, I just decided to kind of take control of that. And I'm like, for my own confidence and for me and for how I feel about my life and everything, I need to take control of that. And I need to once and for all get to the point where I can see 4 abs. And where I'm probably somewhere in the sort of 13 to 15% body fat region, where when I take my top off, I'm going to feel good about it. I look lean and other people can see that I look lean. And again, that seems quite superficial, but it actually just causes me a lot of internal trauma generally in my life to kind of feel like that. So yeah, I think it was just a real moment where I'm like, I've just got to sort this one out. I've got to feel better and I've got to try and make that go away. So that was one big thing that happened that kind of helped propel me. And then the other, without giving Rich too much of a big head, was, we've been in touch. Obviously, we've known each other for a long, long time. We've worked with each other, but over the last few years, it's been kind of like pretty distant on WhatsApp and stuff like that. But we started to talk much more towards the end of last year, and then definitely this year, the amount of WhatsApp messages we send each other every day is kind of insane. And having someone at that moment that was on the same journey as me, and actually on the same journey, like very much on the same journey in terms of probably looking to get from, probably doesn't have the same levels of insecurity or lack of confidence or anything like that. But in terms of just sort of where his body was at and where he wanted to take it, he was somewhere around the same journey. He was somewhere around the same journey in terms of thinking about counting calories and the ideas and the tactics, etc. And just to have someone for accountability, and it's not even so much accountability like I need somebody to prove anything to, but just having someone who knows what you're saying you're going to do, and that you're going to look lame if you're just not doing what you say. If you say I'm going to count calories and I'm going to stick to 2,000, but then you just don't bother putting them in the app, like, it's just, I can't live with myself if I say that and then I don't do it. So catching Rich at the beginning of the year and us starting to talk more and having somebody else to share the journey with, someone that can help with the accountability, and also just someone that can share ideas. I've learned a lot about what are the right things to do to change my body this year. And a lot of that has been interacting with Rich and having conversations about stuff. So yeah, as I look back on it, really it was towards the end of last year, but really very, very specifically the beginning of this year where I just made a real decision. I'm going to change how I look. Once and for all, I'm gonna be someone that has a baseline of just being pretty lean. And it was really a combination of just making that hard decision that once and for all, I've got to change that. It's unacceptable to not do it. I don't want to feel like that anymore. And that happened to time, coincidentally, with spending more time with Rich and just help propel me into a different zone. And the other things I'll say about that as well is that they're not really kind of like inflection points, but they're things that helped with the momentum, and they helped almost like pour a bit of gasoline onto the fire over the last 6 months. As I actually started to see results from taking things, more seriously, and it's just become addicting. Like I've understood my body better. I really know what works. Like at this point, I'm so confident in the approach and the plan. There's not an ounce of me that thinks it's not the right plan. So it's just a matter of doing it. And in the last 8 weeks, I've gone from not being able to see my abs to being able to see my abs. And I've lost the best part of kind of 3.5 kilograms in the last 6 to 8 weeks. And that's really kind of like just kind of poured gasoline on the fire. So if I had that shift at the beginning of the year, but man, it was fueled by basically just starting to see the results from that extra commitment. And now I'm just like, I'm in the zone. Like I can't imagine ever stepping back from kind of this lane that I'm in now. So
that's awesome,
really
man.
Big recent shift.
Was there like a particular holiday or something that you were at? Was there a particular point like at the end of last year where you were like, that there was something that happened that all of a sudden just made you think it, or was it just a accumulation of like things just adding up and then you just finally thinking, fuck it, I need to get this done?
Yeah, it's super weird because it's not like I haven't felt like that for the best part of 20 years.
Yeah.
Right. Now look, work's sometimes, I've had work as a higher priority, and I haven't made health a priority for a number of kind of like real reasons, but it's not like I haven't always felt insecure, and I've always wanted to be somebody that was comfortable to take their top off and not have those insecurities. But just something just really clicked at the beginning of the year in my head, that I couldn't have predicted that would happen. And it just forced me to say, look, just enough is enough. Maybe a bit like your first phase shift, but just from a slightly different angle, and just getting to the point where I don't want to be someone in my 40s that is insecure with their body. It's just like not where I want to be in my life right now. It's just unacceptable. I've got to change it. And it just, it snuck up on me. Otherwise I would have made the change 10 years ago, right? That's a scary thing about it, actually. There's a slightly unpredictable nature of what it took me to take it more seriously. Like, I wish it would have happened earlier, but I'm just grateful that at least it's happened now.
That's awesome, because there'd be so many people that are feeling similarly, to be that have that kind of like nervousness of taking their top off, or not feeling 100% comfortable in their bodies. Like, and there'd be so many people feeling that way. And when you do have that comfort of just being happy with how you look, it influences everything. It really does. It just changes your mind for so many other things. You're like, I look good, feel good, and you just approach things differently.
Yeah, the only one thing I'll say, you mentioned like why kind of now, was there anything big? And I think the only thing I can probably think is the phases that came before it, I think had to happen first for me to be in a position where I just felt confident enough to make that change. So in the last 12 to 18 months, there's a couple of things that have happened that I think have helped build me up to that point. One of them was giving up alcohol, and then how that also led into me building a whole bunch of other self-care habits. Like, I'm pretty OCD around tracking my habits. I do it on a physical notepad. I track my consistency every month. I have 7 or 8 of them, like drinking water, caffeine. And I would say at the end of last year, I had settled into a great place where I'm like, I have built I've built 8 core health habits, that are consistent and rock solid. And I feel like a bit of a different person here. Like, it really gave me the confidence that I can change some things in my life. And it made me feel a lot better. Like, a lot of the kind of confidence issues I'd had in the past, and insecurities, had started to soften and got a lot better from building those habits. I just felt like a better person for it. And I just wonder whether maybe I needed to break the back of that so that I could actually feel, you know what, I can take this on now. So that might have had something to do with it. Now that I look back on it, and that's why it was so interesting to look back on, because as I look back on it, I'm like, well, look, really, it's this year that it's got going, and why is that? And I probably needed to clean a lot of that stuff up, so I had a better baseline to build from, and then that combined with, the accountability piece with Rich just kind of all timed very nicely to make a bigger shift this year.
So great that you two had that accountability together.
Yeah, you obviously, before this year, you have been training like on a fairly frequent basis, right? I mean, I don't know when you took on your personal trainer. I know, and obviously we haven't spoken about that here, but obviously, you work with Jamie, your personal trainer, on a regular basis and whatever else. I don't know when you took him on board, but you were doing CrossFit fairly consistently beforehand as well. So what is it? It obviously wasn't a training trigger. You seem to have been training pretty hard for a while. So what was the difference? Why was that trigger this year and not 2 years ago or 3 years ago if you were already out there putting the effort into training?
Yeah. So unlike Lewis, I don't think I was really training as seriously, so early on. But you're right, Rich. Like the last 5 years has looked like 2 or 3 years of training CrossFit, and then 1 or 2 years, probably 3 or 4 years of training CrossFit, and then a year or so with Jamie as a personal trainer. And I've been training 3 or 4 times a week, and CrossFit is pretty hard workouts. I like the methodology, so it's not like I wasn't putting in a reasonable effort, but there was just I was just much more likely to miss sessions. I don't have the training consistency that I have now. I wasn't counting calories. I wasn't thinking about protein. I didn't have any of the other health habits. I wasn't drinking enough water. I wasn't sleeping well. Like all of these things, and it was just like I was putting in the effort and a reasonable amount of effort. Yet here I still am, not feeling that great, and being 18 to 20% body fat because there was a lot of stuff outside of the training that I wasn't taking proper care of. And I think it just probably took the last year and a half of taking care of those things that allowed me to then switch into gear this year and make some much bigger changes with nutrition, etc. And then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, I'm now getting the results, and then it just snowballed from there. So yeah, you're right. I have been training hard the last 3, 4, 5 years, but there has been reasonable amounts of inconsistency with the training. There has been bits of injury as well, which kind of stopped my flow a bit. And then certainly from a nutrition point of view and other health habits point of view, those things weren't in place. And I think they in the last 12 to 18 months, and then definitely in the last kind of 6 months, those things have made a massive difference to helping me get into a different lane. I didn't feel I was getting the results from the effort I was putting in the last 4 or 5 years.
Having that baseline makes such a difference. I think that's the key bit there, right? Having all those other things dialed in, your sleep, your the protein, everything else, just gave you that baseline to then really ratchet up.
Yeah, I think so. I think I just felt like a different person from getting those things in gear, and it probably just gave me the confidence to then go on and make some other changes that were really just going to give me the results, and then from there things flew a little bit. And I don't know whether there's another level beyond this, hopefully, but I like you, Lewis, I feel like I'm in a good spot now, even though the aesthetics piece is still driving me now. I would like to get to the point where I think what will happen is I'll get lean enough. I'll then get into a position where I'm going to be building on top of that. And I think that aesthetics thing will go away because will feel a lot more comfortable in my own skin. And I'm getting close now. Like, I notice I walk around the house more with my top off now. And it's just because it's not,
Lucky Ella.
Not even really any. Yeah, exactly. But I don't know. I don't like to think that it's a vain thing, but it's just a sign that I'm just a bit more comfortable in my own skin doing something like that. And I'm looking forward to in the summer as well, being able to kind of actually be at the park with the boys and take my top off. I know I'm going to be the leanest amongst my friends, right? So, but what I would like to do at some point is to have that more purpose-driven change like you had, Lewis. Like I have my health goals written down. They are very much like that. They're about being able to do cool things with Fern when she's older and feel great in my 80s and like all of these things, but I'm not sure I really connect with them properly. I know the driver right now is the aesthetics and feeling comfortable in my own skin piece, but I think once I've got that, I'm really looking forward to another phase where really the health and the longevity piece drives me thereafter.
Good one.
So yeah, there definitely is another phase to go, I guess. Well, how about you then, Rich? What's your story in terms of why you're living this life right now?
Yeah, I mean, I suppose there's similarities in both of what you said. I think I may be somewhere in the middle, but I think unlike you guys, I've had a little bit more of like a trigger moment. I don't know if you can hear my dog barking way in the background. I apologize.
Is that you?
That's all right.
It's my dog
joining in.
It's just someone at the door or something. I don't know. I suppose like similar in some ways to Lewis with regards to I've always kind of liked training. Like it's been fun. I played sports when I was younger. I was really into my sports at kind of school and enjoyed that. I was never, the most gifted athlete of all, but would would take part in everything and play everything and whatever else. And then actually had an injury in my late teens, which kind of set that back and kind of knocked me off rails. And then I had to build back up, and then got really into the gym in my early 20s. Became a bit of a gym bro for a while, and I would say back then was in pretty good shape and pretty strong. And then work just took over. And then I think, like so many people, I just prioritized other parts of life. Like, I don't think I ever was healthy when I was at the gym in my 20s. I just enjoyed going to the gym and lifting weights. And probably the way I did it was probably massively inefficient. And I went with friends, and it was just about, how much did you lift? Great. Can we increase the weight next week? Like that was kind of it, right? And that was good fun. I used to enjoy it. And I've always found working out very therapeutic. It would kind of, it's something I enjoy doing. And I used to run quite a lot as well. But it's only now I look back and I realize around kind of mid-20s, I got really, really into work. And then I started my own company in my late 20s. And then I got really into work. And it just took over. Life, I got married, I had kids, I was running a company. And for about maybe a 10, 12-year period of time, health was just very much on the back burner. And I always had a good base knowledge of what I should eat. And so I always ate okay, but I never ate great. And I would be a lot of meals out for kind of business dinners, just normal life. And so what happened over a long period of time is I just became more unhealthy. And it's only now I look back and realize, while I had patches of effort, and I can remember, I did a 8-week program doing strong lifts, or I did like a 3-month period where I really got back into my running and was running like 4 or 5 times a week, or got really back into biking or whatever else. And or whatever it might potentially be, it was actually kind of inconsistent. And so if you run inconsistently for a very long period of time, you actually end up being just not where you want to be. You don't end up being that healthy, right? But naively in my head, I never shifted away from thinking I was that 22, 23-year-old healthy version of me, or healthy, looked healthy, but actually probably wasn't as healthy as I thought it was. But you reach 32, 34, 35, you go through your 30s, and you haven't actually disconnected that you're no longer that person you were the 10, 15 years beforehand, because you've inconsistently kind of almost convinced yourself it hasn't really changed. And that was kind of the path I was on. And then what actually happened for me was a trigger point, which, these stages, I didn't have those stages with my kids, Lewis, that you mentioned. Honestly, it wasn't even in my head. I was like, yeah, cool, child, great, let's go. I didn't really think to the future. I haven't had that kind of self-confidence thing, Daniel, in the same way you've had. I'm quite a confident individual. I just don't really care what other people think very much around that stuff. So I didn't have any of that. What actually happened for me is a couple of years ago, maybe 3 years ago now, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune condition. And what happened there, and I imagine some listeners probably have this, I ended up with a really sore back. And then fast forward that over kind of a 6-month period, that sore back turned into pain in my hips and my joints. So I lost the ability to walk. It got pretty bad. And after time, I was diagnosed with a condition called ankylosing spondylitis, which is a ridiculous name, but it effectively means arthritis of the spine. And that's an autoimmune condition. And so the doctors put me on a series of drugs. I started taking injections every week, along with loads of other stuff going on, just to get me moving again. And it was a shock to the system. And it hit me really, really hard. Like, it was the first time I felt fallible. And as a guy, it was a bit eye-opening. It was like, look, this condition is going to stop me. It stopped me walking. It put me in pain every day. My lifespan theoretically had been reduced quite dramatically. If you don't get it under control, the inflammation attacks your heart and your eyes, and there's all this kind of other shit on around the eyes. Anyway, it's not fun. And it sent me on this kind of journey of, I'm not willing to accept the fact that I have this condition, and I'm not willing to accept the fact that I'm spending the rest of my life on these drugs, and these drugs suppress your immune system and make me a weaker human. And it's spiraled really, and it triggered every single part of my kind of competitive nature into action, enough for me to shift everything. The company I founded, it got acquired, and then I decided this was a big reason I left that company. It was like, I need to focus now on me. Everything else now doesn't matter. I need time to get my health back up to where it needs to be, not just for me, but obviously for my family and for my kids and everything else, is you can imagine. But for me, it was this really important trigger point, which was I was unwilling to accept that I have this condition and it's going to kind of have such a big impact on my future. And so that was the trigger. And then from then, I went on this like journey of how do I get off medication? And so I studied and read and started really getting into kind of down the rabbit hole of details of kind of autoimmune conditions. And so much was driven by diet and lifestyle, and that was it really. And that's where all the habits started appearing. And I mean, this was a good probably 2.5 years ago when I started. And it's only really in the last year, but specifically the last 7 or 8 months, I've now got it really under control, and I've managed to get all my inflammation markers down. Obviously, I have my bloods taken on a really regular basis to check my inflammation, and my last bloods were I have normal inflammation, like it's super, super low. And that is almost entirely down to just changing the lifestyle through diet and nutrition and walking and exercise. And so my goal, while we talk about aesthetics and whatever else, which by the way is an amazing side effect, and I do like it, it's very important to me, but my goal actually is to build the strongest version of me I can possibly be to offset this condition that is very painful and could really, really screw me up in later life. And so that was kind of my trigger. And off the back of that, it just turns out the best way to handle that is just to live a really healthy life. And so I do spend a lot of time walking. My nutrition is on point. I don't like if I think most people look at my diet and be like, you're a loser. And obviously my motivating factor is a bit different. But what it results in is just, it's important for me to live a very healthy life. And that has now translated into everything else. And Dan and I have been speaking loads in this last, 6 or 7 months because we were in touch. Like, well, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And they're exactly the same things. What I do to keep my inflammation low is exactly the same as you would do to lose body fat and build a strong
well, actually,
body.
You know what? Interestingly, like I knew about your autoimmune condition, but it's not really something that comes up much in our conversation, right? You will mention it from time to time, but actually the way you are now, it's almost like you wouldn't know. But the topics we talk about, like, they're just how you should sort of really be living if you want to feel good, you want to look good. It's like, it doesn't come up that much, right? Like you said, the topics are just live a good, clean life, and a lot of other things get figured out.
Yeah, and I'm really proud of from it, and blow my own trumpet a little bit here because it's been a tough couple of years and a hard journey. But nowadays, I don't think if you put me alongside a normal person, you would have any clue that I had that condition versus somebody else. Like, we go away on holidays, so cool. Active holidays. I am a very capable person at this point in time with regards to kind of activity level, output. Some things I can't do, I have to kind of be mindful of, but you couldn't tell that from all things. So yeah, Daniel, like workouts, whatever else. I thoroughly enjoy trying new workouts, whatever else. But there's just something like, hang on, let's not do that one. That's going to hurt. So yeah, no, I really feel I've got it under control. And then the real nice side effect, which I love, is that all the other markers of health have improved alongside focusing on getting that thing solved, right? So I mean, one of them is, as I'm a massive advocate of kind of data, as you guys know. So my Whoop band, I love, just because I'm a data nerd, but it tracks your heart rate performance. And my heart rate and my HRV has improved dramatically this last year. Even the last 6 months, my resting heart rate's gone from kind of 45 down to 41. And that is just because of this consistent behavior now. Like I literally, that's my life. I work out every day. I'm active every day, and even on a rest day, for me, it's like, okay, it's a rest day. Well, there better be 10,000 steps in it plus a band workout in there, otherwise that doesn't work. And so I think, so I have a different trigger, but I end up living the same kind of life. And I wish I could have had this moment in time 10 years ago, which would have made it easier and better, and not take something so severe to get me to actually stop being naive. And ultimately I was naive, right, really. And Tim, Daniel, I think to your CrossFit training, I think I did similar things, right? I think I did strong lifts, I did Athlean X, I went to sports things and classes, I did running lots, but it was always bouts. It was never completely consistent, and it was never partnered with good nutrition and lifestyle alongside it. So there's my story. There's where I'm at. So if anyone's listening who is suffering from things like autoimmune, but by the way, this is the same behaviour to come back from pre-diabetes, countless conditions that we introduce to ourselves based on some of it's genetics naturally, because you're more kind of disposed to conditions, but a massive part is processed food and the crap we put into our bodies, and you end up with these conditions. And actually what you can do, and I have done, is you can literally reverse those conditions by taking control and not just accepting them.
Have you ever thought where you would be if that autoimmune thing didn't come up?
Yeah, I would still be. I don't think I would have changed anything, Daniel, honestly.
Yeah.
I think I would still be living the naive life where work was number one priority. Yeah. Making money was being successful, making money. That's how I was defined kind of success at the time. I don't think that necessarily would have changed. Now, with COVID and everyone working from home, and I found I've got more time now, that has made a difference, but that might have adjusted. But no, I think almost I needed it to give me a kick up the arse to really shine a light on how naive and daft I was being. And because I think if you spoke to me, I'm convinced if you spoke to me, I'm a slightly arrogant person, as Daniel can definitely attest to. If you spoke to me, I think I probably would have said I was healthy. I think I probably would have kind of argued with me, yeah, I'm healthy. And you know what? I was one of those people which, if you said, well, go run 10 miles, I would have gone run 10 miles. I would have run with you 10 miles. But I would have killed myself to do it because I was that person. I wouldn't have found it easy. I would have done it. Where I think the trigger now is I can look back on myself and go, yeah, it was just naivety and stupidity.
I've got a couple of questions. So, was there anything that caused it, or anything that triggered it, or was it because it's an autoimmune? Would it have been lifestyle and diet, or was it just unluck? What was there? Anything in there? Because you're relatively young still to have got it.
Yeah. So well, actually, no. This particular condition hits young men. Generally, you get diagnosed in your early 30s. I was actually quite late to be diagnosed. You normally get it earlier. And actually, I think I've been fighting it for quite a long time. I've just been ignoring the symptoms that go out back. I pushed for it. No, there's a genetic component, but it's part of the arthritis family, and arthritis is very much led by inflammation, and inflammation is very much led by the stuff we put into our bodies. So some of it's genetics, and you can normally tell because other family members will have different types of arthritis, but part of whether someone's got rheumatoid or osteo or whatever, there's all these different types. But it's definitely this particular condition, and I know randomly somebody who used to work for me, who Daniel you would know very well, has the same condition. And so it was quite interesting because when I was diagnosed and told him, and we compared notes, it's been quite good because of course he's also been learning too, which actually this works for me. And there's lots of similarities, and one of the biggest one is walking, movement, exercise, and diet. And once you get that under control, most of the drugs can start disappearing. But no, it's genetic food.
Are you completely off the drugs now? Then do you take any?
Almost, yeah. So I used to be on them. I used to be on when it first started. I was on injections every week and then tablets. Almost most days. So now I don't take tablets hardly ever, and the injections are as I need them. So I think at the moment I haven't taken one in a good month or so.
That's amazing, mate. That is amazing. That is so good.
Look, I think what I was saying, I think it's the same. Like, I just live a good lifestyle now, which really we should all be living, and that's why I'm such a massive advocate of whole foods and avoiding processed foods. But it was, it was really, really hard. It did not like come. Oh, look, now stop. It was a nightmare.
Oh, I can imagine. Yeah.
And then of course for family life as well, and being comfortable being the weird one at the restaurants, all that stuff. The only advantage I actually had over, I think, some people is I've been able to blame a medical condition for really should just be a natural transition in life to make. So if I go to a restaurant, I'm not eating that. And then I can go, well, I can't eat it because of my condition. And in some ways, that's almost like an excuse because of someone saying, well, I don't want to because of, I know that's really fucking full of shit. Yeah, so that was it. Yeah, that was my trigger. And
it is an amazing story, man. Honestly, it just really does show the power of nutrition, just the difference it can make, just eating what we're meant to eat. I was going to ask you, because I think it'd be quite interesting, did you, when you were going through it, because there's so much bad information out there around what good diet looks like or what you should eat or what you shouldn't eat, were there any really good resources that you found when you were initially diagnosed with it, that you looked at that you thought, oh, that's really good, and that kind of set you up for the rest of it?
Do you know, there wasn't one particular resource. It just took a lot of time actually finding good individuals to follow, and then also balancing it as well. So, for example, I really there's a guy Tom DeLure and Max Musgrove, and a couple. So Musgrove, I can't remember his name, and a few others who are on YouTube whose content is phenomenal, but they go too far. They're kind of so optimized. I found it went too far. So for me, it was just a motto of, and actually, Daniel, do you remember you sent this to me? It's the CrossFit kind of motto, which is kind of what you should be eating, right? It's just kind of simple.
It's so good. It's like just stick it in the show notes as well. It's like eat meat, fruit, nuts, vegetables, some starch, no sugar, or something like that. But it's just such an elegant, really, that's just how you should eat. Everybody really should. You eat like that, and everything works itself out.
Mate, that is amazing. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah,
that's just so good to hear that it's pretty much dormant.
Yep.
Would you say, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's still there. It's still there. I wake up in the morning and I have a really stiff neck or whatever else, but I know how to deal with it now. But that's different from these conversations. But I just think it does show the power of. Can you guys hear this ridiculous loud background noise that's coming through?
Yeah, you got the mower. Somebody's doing your lawn.
yeah.
The mower on the go.
I have a closing remark, not it's the closing remark. You guys feel free to say anything as well. But one is, I'm a bit frustrated that your two reasons for kind of clicking are way more purposeful than mine. You basically got Rich, who just had an autoimmune condition. It's I've got to change my life for this reason, and he's a great success story in terms of sort of pushing that right down and changing his life. Then you got Lewis holding his kid, going, "I need to do this for my health, so I can go hiking with you when I'm 70." And then there's me, I just want to have 4 apps.
I mean,
so I'm slightly frustrated that I came off the worst in that. It's pretty shallow.
We set you up entirely. We messaged behind the scenes.
Yeah.
We knew this happened.
But the other closing remark, which I don't even know what to do with, right? But there's a lot of randomness to all of our phases, right? You can't really predict them. And it's for me, I don't know why it clicked at the beginning of this year. Yes, you can roll it back and say, well, look, it was giving up alcohol, and then it was building the habits, and then that allowed me to become a more confident person, and then the stars aligned and I started talking more with Rich, and then it really clicked. I'm going to change my body for real this time. But there's no way I could have mapped out that 2-year journey up front, and in some ways that's really scary because it feels like it's not in your control. But the only thing I really try and take from that is you've at least got to try and keep pushing in the right direction. And I think if you keep pushing in the right direction, you'll get a number of clicks, and then I think eventually, like us, you'll find that there'll be a major one. And then from there, you can't ever imagine going back to what it used to be before. So I don't even think that's very useful advice for anybody, because it's not specific, and that there's no like really detailed plan that can come from it. But at some point, you've got to realize that health is the thing to focus on above all else, because actually a lot of other things in life aren't going to really make much sense if you're not a healthy person. And if you just keep pushing forward in that direction, I think you're going to get the right clicks you need to kind of be a better version of yourself.
I think that's a nice summary, to be honest, mate. I think that's it's everyone finding the reason to do it themselves. Like, we're not all going to have the same journey, right? And it's what is important to us, what is important to you, that's going to keep you focused on something that's really fucking hard, because there's so much temptation, and it's so easy to not do this. It's so easy not to do this, to try to focus on what you're eating, and to try and eat clean and not eat processed foods, and not, to get up and exercise. And it's so hard to do that with all the temptation that there is. So it's actually just finding that one reason or two reasons that are going to keep you focused for it. So you'll want the 4 abs, mate. That's working for you. Go for it. It's like, that's important to you. That's 100% right. Rich, he has his, I've got my. Everyone just needs to find what's gonna keep them focused on not having that donut.
They're all going to lead. They're all going to lead to the same endpoint anyway,
Yeah.
right? Because like my 4 abs aesthetic focus is making me feel and look better, and it's ultimately going to get me to the point where I am going to be 70 and I'm going to go hiking with Fern. You might have started off from that different point, right? And it's the same with Richard's. Like, there's just so much overlap that you're going to end up probably in the same type of place, which is just the best place to be, no matter what your kind of individual reasons are, I think. Cool. We did like the worst job at keeping this between 30 to 45 minutes, by the way. We're 56, but that's cool. It was better than 110 last week, so we're making progress.
Under an hour. I think that's good. Under an hour, that's all right.
Yeah. Didn't we say that the first few of these is all going to be about us figuring out ourselves anyway?
Exactly.
It becomes useful content for you actually listening, like
part of the journey, yeah.
Part of the journey, yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, you guys have. Well, Lewis, you're going to sleep now, right?
I am going to bed.
So
9:30 where I
Do you
am.
realise the side effect of listening to us for this last 50 minutes is if I was me from 10 years ago listening to this, I'm going to be like, cool, well, fuck that. I'm going to go and have some pizza.
I'm going to just go to the gym and bench press.
Would you though? Would you? I'm not sure, man. I don't know. I think there's some good stuff in there. I think there's some good stuff in there. It'd be interesting to hear it back.
All right. Well, have a good sleep, and Rich, have a good day.
Thank you, chat.